Welcome to the Across the Bar podcast, where we talk about why today's headlines are important for your success at work. My name is Peter Rahbar, and I'm your first call on legal issues.
I'm Laura Brounstein, and I was leaning back too far for anyone watching on video, and now Peter and I have the same size head, basically. I'm Laura Brounstein, your expert for comms and content, and I'm so happy to see you, Peter. How are you on this beautiful spring day?
70 degrees in New York.
What?
Let's celebrate. The snow piles are gone.
It's that first day when everybody's out, dressing lightly.
Yeah,
going out.
it's great. I met a client out for coffee today. It was beautiful weather. Couldn't have
Did you
been
go iced coffee?
more pleasant. Oh, I've fully made the switch over to iced coffee. I am a seasonal iced coffee drinker.
Me
I have
too.
friends who are full-time iced coffee drinkers. I don't totally understand that, but
My partner is also when it was 5 degrees upstate, drinking an iced coffee. But
yeah.
today I went to go make myself, I go through phases. I went to go make myself a nice cup of Earl Grey tea, and I was like, oh, is that what I want? Or do I wish I was having an iced coffee right now? And I was a
So you
little
made the switch.
hot tea. Well, I noticed this morning I was sad about the hot tea, so tomorrow will be iced coffee.
Okay, great.
All right, let's talk about our topics.
Yeah.
I want everyone to know that Peter sent me an idea related to AI this week before I sent him an AI idea. And so he always accuses me of being obsessed with AI, and he's actually the one obsessed. Okay, so we're going to talk about Congress and AI, the Pentagon and AI, and really Anthropic and all the lawsuits going back and forth, bosses behaving badly like the chef at Noma, the great migration to Texas, which I find fascinating, and finance bros gone wild.
Yeah.
Which we get into first?
Well, let's do the. Actually, before we jump into one of the AI topics, I want to follow up with some viewer feedback on the Kash Patel story, which
Now, was it a viewer or a listener feedback?
I guess a listener, who wrote me this week and said, I listened to your podcast on Kash Patel. My first rule on celebrations as a boss is that you should do a drive-by and say hello, then be the first to leave and always pay the bill. And I got to say, spot on.
Spot on. Scott Galloway always says that if more than 3 people from his team are going out, they get his credit card automatically. But I think your friend has totally said it really well. First there.
Yeah.
First out.
By the way, I doubt Kash Patel paid for that beer. How about that? Another reason
You could be right. You could be
he
right.
was acting inappropriately.
All right.
Anyway.
Thank you. One fan. We appreciate you.
Yeah, we have many fans. We have many fans. He's not our only fan.
Okay. All right. Anthropic and the Pentagon. There are many lawsuits going back and forth. There is, Peter, talk about the lawsuits.
Well, the government's moving first by decree from Pete Hegseth and now by executive order is the report to remove Anthropic from all its systems based on the breakdown in negotiations they had that we talked about last week.
The negotiations was that our current administration wants them to remove all safety mechanisms that would keep it from just on its own deciding to play thermonuclear.
Well, as we have on other things with this administration, we've heard a lot of different explanations for what's happening, but it seems like, based on some reporting in the last couple of days, they wanted the ability to use Anthropic any way they want to, and Anthropic wanted some safeguards over uses that it felt Claude wasn't ready for yet.
Yeah.
And that was the basically distilled down explanation of, like, if you're an airplane manufacturer and your plane has a maximum speed, you don't want the government to fly it beyond that speed, and you would want them to agree not to fly it beyond that speed, which makes total sense as an analogy. And as we discussed, there was also personalities involved in this situation, people with potential conflicts that they're allowed to serve in these positions regardless, and that's a problem.
What are the conflicts? Remind us.
Well, potential competing ownership stakes in OpenAI. And so when you look at what...
Some of the people making decisions about Anthropic's deals with the government are investors in OpenAI.
Yes. And in fact, There was reporting last week where there's over 1,500 government officials who have potential conflicts based on their investments in areas that they oversee. But putting that to the side for a second here.
Okay. It's insane. Go on.
It is insane. It's totally insane. But, Anthropic is, and also now their government's trying to also classify Anthropic as a threat to the government systems or whatever it is. And so Anthropic is suing and saying there's no foundation for any of this. The government is exceeding its authority and taking these actions against the firm. And we'll see what happens, in the courts. But this has gotten very ugly very quickly. And it should be noted that the OpenAI deal did have a lot of these safeguards that Anthropic was requesting.
Oh, it did?
So, yeah, sure did.
So it's not just that they want things that that Anthropic isn't doing. They're having a double standard, you're saying.
Yeah, they're having a double standard.
But if they weren't, here's the thing. If I am hiring software, we use Riverside to record our podcast. And if Riverside suddenly was like, well, Across the Bar podcast, you can record on the platform, but you can't edit anymore. We would be like, fuck you, we're not using this platform anymore. In some ways, as much as I think there's a chance that what the government wants to do with Claude and Anthropic is probably like some degree of scary and evil, a company or the government, an entity should have the right to expect or ask for certain things with a contract, right?
Yeah, it's very common. Anyone who uses software or buys software or a website, a service, you're agreeing to their terms of use. There are terms of use. You can, just like you're not supposed to use.
Say, I don't like your terms of use, I'm out, which is kind of what
right, exactly.
Did, right? Did the government sue Anthropic, or they put Anthropic as dangerous and then Anthropic sued them, and then there's an amicus brief by Anthropic employees, right?
The latter. The government has now, in several different ways, and even more to come, designated Anthropic as someone who shouldn't be, as a contractor that shouldn't be used by any agency in the government. So that's potentially billions of dollars, and Anthropic is suing to reverse that designation. Now, interestingly, the public sentiment seems to be on Anthropic's side. So Claude, as we talked about last week, has experienced the highest levels of usage in its existence.
Which is so crazy, yeah.
Which is great. Two very senior OpenAI executives have left OpenAI to join Anthropic because they didn't, support Sam Altman's immediate jumping in the boat. Very senior strategic and engineering employees. So I
feel very badly about our chances as a planet and civilization if the safeguards on these potential scary, scary tools are just left in the hands of the people who could make money off of them. I don't know. So far, making good decisions, it seems, but
yeah, well, that is, and that's something we talked about, and it feeds into our next topic also on the government attempts to regulate AI. I mean,
it was really interesting because Josh Hawley and I do not agree on most issues, but he has been on it with all of the tech stuff. He's been really on top of it. He knows what he's talking about in meetings, which everyone should, but they don't usually in Congress. So, cheers to him for being out in front of this. But also, interesting, they are unable to do some of the regulating they want because of pushback from the Trump administration, it seems.
Right. The administration's position is that we shouldn't regulate AI, or no one should regulate AI other than them. So they don't want the states to regulate AI. They don't want Congress to do it. Only the executive branch should do it in whatever manner they see fit, which is really no manner. And we've seen this play out before with the social media platforms. The lack of regulation, the immunity from regulation has had very dangerous consequences. And really the only meaningful way to regulate those social media platforms has been through either public embarrassment in the news cycle or lawsuits, frankly, that take years to play out. And so why should we have to go through that again with what you rightly designate as potentially dangerous but consequential technology. Why can't we have some smart regulation, sensible regulation? And the reality is, if we don't do it, the EU and other bodies are going to do it. And why not be a leader on this?
We read in Politico, which was great, was saying that as much as what you're saying is true, that Europe will regulate, China won't. And the fears of falling behind are also valid.
Right. No, I understand that. But there are sensible steps we could take about exposure to children, about using it for harassing and abusive purposes. Yeah. I think there's also the government could take a role in preventing job loss, for AI, like have specific reporting requirements for companies who are eliminating jobs due to AI use. Provide tax incentives to companies to not eliminate jobs for AI, but to create new jobs instead. I mean, there are smart ways. Regulation does not always have to be bad. And one of the really unfortunate things, we'll talk about it later in the podcast, but I'll mention it here too. The corporate world has just taken this position that all regulation is bad. And that's just not true.
Of course not.
It's just not true.
The administration's point of view is government is bad except us, so basically.
Yeah, I mean, which is ridiculous because they just want control. That's what it is. And by the way, that's the worst type of regulation. Like even the corporate types, like our friend Jeff Bezos, don't like that.
Republican or conservative. It's just amazing how this has changed around and how much the government wants to be up in everyone's business.
Right. And as we've talked about, it's caused major headaches for corporate leaders trying to figure out when the government will choose to get involved or uninvolved. We have government agencies potentially overreaching their authority. Like we have the chairman of the FCC talking about merger approval. That's not under his, his authority. But if you're running one of those companies, now all of a sudden you have to think about, well, I was thinking about the Department of Labor. I was thinking about, the FTC. I was thinking about the SEC. Now I got to think about the FCC on top of that, So it's unpredictability is not good for corporate decision making. We've seen that. And you forgot to ask me about the Peter meter, but I would say, we're already starting to see the effects. Peter meter is not in a good place in terms of, losses versus hiring. I mean, companies, I think if this war in particular goes on longer than another week or two, I think you're going to see hiring much ground to a halt.
If gas prices stay up for more than another week or so, you're going to start to see people having issues. We obviously are lamenting the tragic loss of military life and civilian life, but it's the price of gas that is going to make most Americans angry.
Right. So people want to start planning summer vacations. Gas is a big part of that. Airline fares apparently are ready to spike in about a week if things don't calm down.
I bet that's true. I've booked some flights. I also just keep thinking about what happens when, and this is going to happen, somebody requests records from an AI company because somebody was asking it questions about getting a safe abortion or other safe reproductive health care. And when the state of Texas wants to, ask for those records, is the company required to do it? Would Anthropic be required? Has there been any conversation on that?
I haven't heard conversation on those specific things, but I think we'll get there. And I will say, like I've said many times, and like I've told you privately,
no expectation of privacy.
No, you should not. If you're using it just like the basic open version of AI, you have no expectation of privacy. You're essentially sharing your data with third parties. Now, if you have a closed loop or a personal LLM, like different story. But it's amazing to me. Those are some really scary implications that you raise. And if these companies are in the mode of trying to satisfy the government, you could probably understand what their answer is going to be if the government comes looking for those records.
Yep. Okay, so speaking of Texas, I am fascinated by the current migration to Texas. it's been going on for a while, but I just pulled up this number. So the last year that migration within the country was, last year we have clear numbers for, the most recent year we have clear numbers for is 2023, and it led the US in net domestic migration, meaning like people moving there. Right. And we just saw another story you sent me. What was that one on Texas migration?
Exxon.
Yes, moving their headquarters there.
Right. And there's been several companies, notably Tesla was one of them, and I believe Meta, also moving their corporate headquarters, all for different reasons. Taxes are a big reason to move out of California and move out of New Jersey, where Exxon was. Meta was Tesla was a little different issue. They were based in Delaware, where a lot of companies are based.
They were incorporated in Delaware, but they were based in California.
Yeah, but they moved the incorporation also. They reincorporated in Texas. And the problem there was
stock exchange yesterday for an event, and I overheard someone who sounded like he knew who he was talking about. So yes, I am giving a news factoid that I overheard in an elevator, but he had on a badge. He looked like he knew things. And he was saying that there are more financial service professionals in Texas right now than in New York.
Yeah, a lot of back office functions have been moved to Texas from the major banks. But let's be clear here. New York is still the financial capital of the U.S., if not the world. So the key decision makers still reside in New York.
I just think it's fascinating. All these people want to move to Texas. It is a land of strange laws, and it's really hot.
Well, there's also a lot of stories. You're looking at numbers from 2023, but there's stories in the last year of people leaving Texas who moved there. Personally, I'm a fan of Texas. I've been there many times. I have a lot of good friends who live there. I've always had a good time there. There's a lot, there's some great cities, some great food. But yeah, like legally, there's a lot of craziness. I've handled some crazy cases in Texas where you could still find judges who will make crazy decisions because they're local and your lawyer knows them, and things like that.
Give us a little taste. Like why someone could be fired was crazy?
No, I had a non-compete, a rating talent case many years ago where a competitor tried to steal my client's employees, like a large group of them. And we were able to get an injunction on, some would say, minimal grounds because our lawyer knew the judge,
Here, I think it was obviously your legal talent.
Oh, it must have been my charge. Well, it wasn't me. They didn't want a New York guy in the courtroom. But look, different companies go there for different reasons. There's definitely been a movement. Taxes are one. Delaware has done some things legally in the last couple of years.
Time Texas tries to secede.
I don't think that'll happen. But
I'm going to go on Polymarket and put a bet on that, I think.
Oh, God. Well, I was going to say Delaware used to be a very predictable and corporate-friendly legal environment, and over the past couple of years that has changed. There was a big case about not approving Elon Musk's pay package, which was the reason why Tesla moved to Texas.
But also, Elon and Delaware had a special hate for each other because of all of the many issues with the Twitter deal, etc.
Yeah, exactly. And that all came from the courts. That was all his problem with the courts and not supporting what he wanted.
But I'm saying by the time we were talking about the pay deal, they already hated each other.
Yeah.
Delaware and Elon Musk.
Well, it's a very serious issue in Delaware. The positions these judges.
He's going to Delaware now?
Yes. Yes. And in the legal world, we talk about it all the time. Even I do a lot of work on non-competes. The positions of the courts in Delaware has changed significantly, less employer friendly. So companies are putting in different, governing law provisions, different states, Florida, Texas.
I lived there, as you know, for 6 long months, and
usually don't have good things to say about it.
It did not seem economically on the up. So.
Well, that's why this is causing a lot of concern. The companies incorporating there and paying to be there, was a big source of income for the state. And if they
Yeah.
leave, that's a big
All
problem.
these things go together.
Yeah.
Okay, those stupid freaking finance bros.
The bros.
What did they do? They posed for a fashion shoot wearing exceedingly expensive clothes for what magazine? Someone.
Interview magazine. And I sent it to you last week right before we went on air, and you were like, we're going to talk about this? What the hell? And since the story initially came out, it's kind of at least really taken hold here in New York.
Yeah.
But the overview is that I think it was 4 or 5 young male investment bankers in New York. So
Okay.
guys in their 24, 25 years old, participated in this photo shoot with a couple of questions about like where they live, how often they go out, how many hours a week they work, and blah, blah, blah. And they look ridiculous. They were wearing these very expensive suits, and they said some crazy things. And it turns out that at least 1 or 2 of them did not have permission from their banks to take part in this photo shoot.
Oh.
And
Always get permission before you talk to the media, and make sure not just your direct boss, but if there is a comms person, make sure they are aware they can protect you. Let them make a call for you. It's to protect you from making an ass of yourself.
right. So that's definitely one angle on the story, which is most companies have media policies regarding who could talk to media,
Fire
what approvals
in an
you.
employment contract, like if you do press without permission, you can be cut.
Well, certainly, so you should know the policy. If you have an employment contract, it's certainly going to be something that's covered in there. And in fact, like bringing your company into disrepute could be a reason to fire you for cause. And so you need to be aware of what your company's policy is, what your contract says, and you need to get permission. So that's one angle. The other angle is if you're 24 years old and starting out your career, particularly in a bank, which is an exceedingly competitive environment,
Read the room.
you shouldn't be doing a photo shoot like this. Like, I don't even know how these guys came in and faced their colleagues the next day or their bosses. I mean, no one likes that. You need to read the room. You need to know bosses don't like surprises, and they don't like people who are more focused on enhancing their own reputation than the company's reputation.
Brand. Always remember that. And so if you are a business owner or a CEO, it is really important. Take a look, talk to your head legal and head comms, and make sure you do have a policy that is clearly stated of what employees should do if they hear from the media. And then make sure that that is well disseminated, that everyone is aware of it, and enforce it. If I was starting a company that had multiple employees right now, I would certainly put in the employment contract. I mean, it would probably be at will, but I would also say doing interviews on behalf of the company without previous permission is grounds for dismissal. And I have really talked to my cat about that she should not do any interviews as my current employee.
Well, I mean, companies take it very seriously. And by the way, it could cause problems for companies, like unauthorized statements cause huge problems. And that's the last thing they want to deal
Goldman
with, right?
Sachs look good having these little, I can't think of anything to call them other than dipshits, do this.
I mean, imagine being smart enough and having gone through all the hoops to get a job at Goldman Sachs, but not being smart enough to realize this was a bad idea. I mean, that's what I keep going back to.
Yeah.
But if you're starting a job, you should take an hour, read all the policies, just make sure you know the landscape. If you've never worked anywhere
like
before,
like a manual or instructions, you can just wing it and not read. Like read.
Yeah, and it's not something your parents can save you from. It's not something you could like beg for forgiveness in most cases. Like, this is like serious. It's grown-up stuff. Now, lucky for me, there's never been a request to have like young lawyer photo shoot, so I never had to deal with this.
Oh, poor Peter. Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to do a photo shoot with Peter. But also, let's talk about, we were talking about youngs behaving badly. Now let's talk about bosses behaving badly.
Yeah.
Well, there has been a planned pop-up in LA for the famed and recently, several years ago, is closed. Best restaurant in the world, Noma. It was supposed to have an extended pop-up in LA. And it just lost its sponsors because of articles that came out about the bad behavior of the Noma chef, whose name I'm not saying because I think I'll pronounce it wrong.
René Redzepi.
Okay, good job. Good job.
Yeah.
Some of the shit this guy did was insane.
Insane. So,
Yeah.
I mean, we went through a phase a couple years ago where a bunch of chefs with really terrible treatment of their employees were, outed.
Mostly about sexual abuse and harassment.
Yeah, some of it was. Well, he was in it. I mean, this is not the first time his behavior has. He's already apologized and
stabbing, people bleeding on the floor, and nobody helping them. Like, what is wrong with this person? Threatening people's families? What is wrong with you if you are doing that over a meal?
Yeah, none of it's okay. I mean, they had a lot of practices that I think are just horrific. Like they had interns they didn't pay who worked insane hours.
Yes,
and it turns out
I had many unpaid internships in my day that I learned a lot from. That is not the practice anymore. So I'm glad that did change before they closed.
Yeah. Well, a restaurant making a couple mil a week, can afford to pay a bunch of young interns. But physical assault and violence against your staff, like that you don't need to hear it from me. Like that's just bad. And the extent of this guy's power is really apparent in why this story is only coming out 10 years after the fact, which is like he had the power to make or break someone's career. If you worked at Noma, you could be made for life, and if he didn't like you, you could be ruined for life and never work in food again.
I don't feel sorry for him at all, but I feel sorry for a lot of other people who are probably involved in this. This obviously took months to put together, this pop-up.
Right.
And I feel badly for everyone involved except for him.
Well, I almost bought tickets to it, so I'm pretty glad I didn't.
Oh,
but
for me, yeah.
Well, I'm going to be in LA in June, and I was like, might as well go to this. And then I thought twice about it.
That was fun.
But people question, and I already hear some of this since the stories come out, like, oh, it was 10 years ago. Who cares? Why is it coming out now? Blah, blah, blah. And again, it goes to the power structure that exists that A, allow for this behavior to occur, and then B, make it take so long for it to come out because people are just afraid of what's going to happen to them when it comes out. I mean, you could look at other examples like Harvey Weinstein, et cetera, behavior that was going on for years that people feared, talking about. Epstein, whatever it may be. So like, let's have some sympathy for the people who are brave enough to bring it forward. Yeah. And obviously restaurants, I love restaurants.
The survivors.
Yeah, there's a way to do it and be good. There are plenty of people who run restaurants who are good people who do it the right way. Yes. And hopefully, that's remembered as we discuss this story.
Yes. But, all right. I think it's time for Heroes and Zeros.
Yeah, great. Well, I will start with my zero, and it's not just the president generally, but a very specific story that obviously there's a lot of serious stuff going on in the world, and I'm not like downplaying any of that, but story came out this week that he's basically forcing people who work for him to wear certain Florsheim shoes, and then he's basically taunting them if they don't wear it, and then buying these $145 shoes for
Why does he love them?
I don't know. I mean,
someone could come into his office wearing the most beautiful Gucci loafers, and he would be like, "Why aren't you wearing Florsheim?"
Exactly. So being the control freak that he is, and look, I'm coming at this because I'm a huge shoe person. So like, I'm a huge sneaker person.
Yeah, I knew you were a sneaker person. Yeah.
Huge shoe person. So if my boss told me what shoes to wear, I might be leaving the job. Like that might be a red line for me.
I have told you many stories about how wonderful Lucy Danziger is, but I will tell you a funny one. When she realized on a trip to LA that the shoes I was wearing were aerosols, she fully made me go and buy other shoes before a meeting because she was like, "I can't have you in a meeting with this bubble."
Yeah, but you were in fashion. I mean, that's a little different.
It was just funny. She was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it really has to be industry appropriate, and I would say in the government, I'm going to assume that a lot of these people, in fact, one of the unnamed government officials was very upset that he had to give up his Louis Vuitton shoes for the Florsheim shoes.
Are barely making ends meet with $20 shoes and don't want these shoes.
Well, Scott Besson isn't barely making ends meet.
No, even though the soybean farmers have been hit.
Lutnick. Oh, I saw Howard Lutnick this weekend, by the way. I don't want to say where, but I saw him. And a friend of mine pointed him out to me, and I said, oh, I had a very negative reaction. And then my friend immediately said, I wish I didn't tell you that he was over there. And it was unfortunate, but I did not confront him or anything.
That must have been awkward.
Yeah, he looked kind of sleazy, by the way, FYI.
That's surprising.
Shocker.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you're a boss, you shouldn't be telling your employees what kind of shoes to wear. And if you're going to buy them shoes, buy them nice shoes. Nothing against Florsheim, but I think he could afford better shoes.
I agree.
Great American company, by the way.
Guess. I am going to call out barrel leg jeans. They're so bad. Why does Gen Z keep trying to like these horseshoe shaped jeans? They are the dumbest looking things I've ever seen. I'm sorry. These jeans, like, are at their widest at the knee and then go in. I think everyone looks absolutely absurd with them on. And I don't know why this is an ongoing fashion thing and it keeps not going away. I will keep trying to not make eye contact with them or anyone wearing them and hope they will go away. Sorry.
That's gonna do it, you think? Yeah. That's going to make them go away? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And my hero.
Who's your hero? Yeah.
I went to the nicest event yesterday. Thanks to my friend Melinda Ahrens, I got to go to an event at the Stock Exchange for the closing bell with Paris Hilton and Gloria Steinem.
Wow. About two female icons.
I know. You know what? Paris Hilton does a great job these days. She is a DJ. She is very involved with a foundation that I do work with, understood.org, which helps people who learn and think differently to thrive. She has ADHD and has done a lot of work with them. It was just a whole room of women. Everybody, it was so nice out. Everybody was dressed up. I made like 5 friends with like people I was just standing next to. It was like a good reminder, A, leave the house, go to the thing, talk to the people, and that we are very hard on our female icons. And then we sometimes forgive them. We were very hard on Paris Hilton, obviously, earlier. People have been hard on Gloria Steinem, but it was really nice seeing them both together. Oh, and I met Amanda Nugan, the astronaut, who is the real astronaut that was part of the Blue Horizon.
Blue Origin.
Blue rocket. Origin flight. Remember there was one real scientist and astronaut on it? Yeah. I met her yesterday, and I was like, I am so sorry your parade got rained on. And she was like, oh, thank you. And she was
wow, what an event.
3
so much. Yeah. Wow. Triple hero. First
great.
Time.
Yeah. How about you?
I guess I have 5 heroes with what I'm about to say. The 5 members of the Iran women's soccer team. Who...
Oh, I was going to say the president of Australia, and I forgot. Okay, go on.
All right. Well, related. You could join in on this. I have no problems. Who refused to sing the national anthem, the Iran national anthem, at a recent game, and were immediately attacked back home in the press and by commentators, and sought asylum in Australia and were granted that, and immediately left the team. And Australia granted them asylum, and that's great. And the president encouraged Australia to do that, which is interesting because the president before this war sent back 2 planes of Iranian asylum seekers who were in the U.S. back to Iran to presumably die or go to prison.
When was that?
That was within the past year. People forget about it. Didn't get a lot of press, but I mentioned it once here on the podcast. So kudos to those women who made a very brave decision and probably can never go back to Iran again, while this regime is in.
But big shout out to the Prime Minister, or President, or all the leadership in Australia who have given them asylum in Australia. And making them citizens or just giving them asylum?
Asylum. I mean, this is an ongoing thing, so let's see where it goes.
Good for Australia.
Yeah. And there's going to be also major I know you don't like the sports talk too much, but I'll tell you that the World Cup is this summer in the U.S. and Iran is one of the teams in the World Cup, and there's a real issue about whether they're going to be able to play here or not. So stay tuned.
I will. All right, Peter, I think this was a very informative episode. You did a great job.
So did you, Laura. And let's head back outside our respective outside positions and enjoy this beautiful day.
Let's do it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for watching, listening. Thank you, Sadie, for editing and producing. And we'll see you next week on the Across the Bar podcast. Take care.
Bye.